Which car are you going to choose to get a head start in next week's dailies? What car will own it in your private league? And which car will destroy your friends in your weekend tear-up? We all ask these questions at different times through our GT7 journeys, and now I'm going to do the work so you don't have to. So let's go. Welcome everyone to this brand new channel and a brand new series comparing Group 3 cars on Gran Turismo 7. With all of the online spreadsheets, how to drive tutorials, race footage and brilliant lap guides available, it's still hard to find relevant up-to-date comparisons between Group 3 cars on GT7. Whether you're 1 second quicker than me or 3 seconds slower, there will be something for everyone in this series. Through a sequence of tests, I'll show you direct comparisons in acceleration, top speeds, tyre wear, fuel consumption and balance of performance, or BOP. I'll also show you when to upshift your chosen car and what brake balance range to work with. And all of this starts right now with the Group 3 Volkswagen Beetle. This eye-catching version of the Beetle weighs between 1289 kilos and 1310 depending on the BOP setting of the track it's being driven on. I will be telling you what tracks have low, mid and high settings for BOP later in the video. It also has an FR drivetrain, meaning it has front mounted engine and a rear wheel drive. But you didn't come here for its technical spec, you came here for its performance, so let's get on with it, starting with the acceleration and the upshift points. The whole point of this first set of tests is not only to find out which cars accelerate the quickest, but to also know when to shift the gears to get the most speed out of each car. For this group of tests I'm using the Tokyo Expressway East track because it offers a long straight from the start right up until the first split point. To ensure each test is equal, I will stay in the same lane for all of them. As you can see from this one, I'm upshifting at about 50% on the rev bar and the time for it is 27.646. For all of the comparison tests that I'm doing, I've made standard template saves in the online lobby part of the game rather than using the time trial section of the world maps. The online lobby section allows me to add BOP, fuel consumption, tyre wear and equal conditions for each save. This particular test is using a 75% upshift on the rev bar and the time for it is 27.507. For these specific acceleration tests I have equal conditions and BOP set to on, fuel consumption is set to +1 and tyre wear is also set to +1. I'm using medium rating tyres for this locked in save as it's not too slippery and it's not too grippy. This test is roughly showing a 90% upshift on the rev bar and the time is 27.338, indicating that I'm getting quicker using more of each gear. One thing that did stand out in this car is how short the gear ratios are. The car was quicker wheel spinning for a bit in first, rather than immediately jumping to second after launch. With fuel and tyre wear set to +1, this meant I had to do an outlap to get to the start line and then reset after the first split every time to ensure the tests were equal. The time for this 100% upshift test is 27.327, which is just slightly quicker than the last one. As some of you already know, some of these cars like to be fully revved out, and on this 5th run I'm revving out each gear to its limit. Unlike some other Group 3 cars, there is not a lot more give beyond the 100% rev bar on this Beetle before it tops out. This means it's very easy to lose time in this zone. The time for this run was back to 27.6, over 0.3 slower than upshifting bang on 100%. Due to the front mounted engine, all of the weight is at the front of the car, creating a lot of wheel spin at launch from the rear wheel drive tyres. I tried different variations to get a quicker getaway, including starting with 80% throttle, starting with 50% throttle and starting in second gear. This run, starting with 80% of throttle and upshifting at 100% of the rev bar, was the quickest of them all. Even though I have no comparisons to give you yet besides the Beetle data, here is a sneak peek on how the leaderboard will be laid out going forward. The fastest split will be highlighted in the relevant column, and from watching the videos you'll know any other relevant info like the 80% throttle on launch you heard on this one. On to the next, and this is the first of 2 top speed tests. On this first one we are looking at the flat out top speed of the Beetle in a straight line, and there is no better place to judge that than the Route X special stage. For this test save, BOP is on, equal conditions mode is on, fuel consumption is at ×1 with 100 litres in the tank, soft racing tyres are fitted but tyre wear is off as I didn't see any need for it. The first long straight at Route X takes us up a long hill and then back down the other side. After the downhill section, the cars slowly lose speed before settling at their natural top speed before the bend at the end. So when I reach the 10,000 metre gate, that is when I'll take the reading we came for. To save you from the pain of watching this through, I've sped up the footage until we get closer to the end of the straight. As you can see now, we have a top speed of 273 km/h. I've used km/h rather than miles per hour, as it is a smaller unit of measure that will show finer differences between the cars, and all will be placed on a simple leaderboard like this when we have more. The next top speed test is a single lap time staying tight to the inside line of the Daytona tri-oval after 1 out lap to get up to speed. We pick up the video on the hot lap. As with Route X, the BOP and equal conditions are set to on, the fuel consumption is ×1 and the tyre wear is off. I am once again using soft racing tyres in the save for this test. I am racing in VR, and as anyone who races in VR all the time will tell you, it's really hard trying to drive on a flat screen. I am using a great wheel mounted on a rig, but it's so hard to keep to the inside line because I'm not used to the screen at all. Anyway, the lap time we have clocked for this is 53.465, and we'll see how it does against the others. Next up, I'm testing cars against each other around tracks. For those who don't know, GT7 uses 3 different groups of balance of performance settings for its cars, and every track in the game is assigned to one of these groups. The first group is low speed BOP, and you are seeing a list of all of the tracks that are assigned to this group. For my low speed BOP tests I will be using the Sardegna B track for its long straight, tight turns and elevation changes, so let's get to it. I did mention about only driving in VR, and this is how we'll be doing the rest of the tests. Again, these tests have BOP and equal conditions saved to on. I'm using ×1 fuel and tyre wear as the weight distribution matters for true comparison. For that reason the tank is full with 100 litres, and I'm also using medium racing tyres. I did notice how great the brakes are in this car, but that might be due to the recent weight reduction in the 1.66 update. Although this car does have lots of oversteer, I did find my best time using the +3 brake balance around this track to help rotate it into tighter corners. For some turns, like the first, I upshifted early from 2nd to 3rd to counter the wheel spin, giving me more traction to get on my way. Even then though, you still have to go careful with the throttle. For these BOP track tests I'm going to be using my optimum times over a series of laps. The times will be slower than the time trials or the daily qualies due to the weight. As there is no bumper view info to look at in VR, I look at the in-car HUD just for you after I cross the line. The optimum time for the Beetle in the low BOP test is 1:20.778. So nothing to compare to yet, but this is how the leaderboard will look when it starts to fill up. Let's move on to the mid BOP test. For the mid-speed BOP, here are the tracks that use these balance setups. For this group I selected the Road Atlanta course to see how the cars cope with the weight distribution in the dodgy first sector, and for the tricky downhill braking at the end of sector 1 and the start of sector 3. All of the settings for this one are the same as the low BOP test. For these BOP tests, I leave the pits and do a 10-lap stints after the out lap so that the optimum times aren't achieved by one car having less fuel than another. I spend a couple of stints trying different gears out of corners and finding the quickest brake balance before a final stint trying to be faster. For this track I found much more success using brake balance at +1, and I can only attribute that to the extra stability it brings to the turns at the end of the fast downhill sections. As with the low BOP test, the Beetle is very twitchy out of slow corners like this one coming up. There's lots of wheel spin in second creating oversteer, but it feels too slow to upshift straight to third as you still can't floor it. Although I will say though that compared to the time trial version of this car that has more horsepower and no fuel weight, the Beetle really does feel well planted around this track, though it is over 3 seconds slower than the circuit experience time. The car is dodgy but fun exiting this chicane and needs a shorter shift up to 4th over the brow of the hill for speed and stability. So as I take the final bend and cross the line for the final time, you can see on the HUD that the optimum time is 1:19.156, and that time is transferred onto the mid-BOP table for future comparisons. That takes us straight on to our final BOP test, and all of the remaining tracks fall into this high-speed BOP group. From the list, I chose Daytona for the gripless exits in Sector 1, the suicide chicane in Sector 2 and the high-speed Sector 3. All of the settings are the same as the last two for this one, and it's important to add that I added track limit penalties to my saves for these lap time tests so that I couldn't cheat the results by cutting corners. If anyone was wondering, I don't have any assist controls on except for the ABS brakes, which are set to default. Once again, braking feels smooth and effective in this car, but I did need to use a combination of second gear throttle control and early upshift to third to maximise speed in Sector 1. I did try downshifting to first around these tracks, but I found that it seemed to slow the car down too much due to its very short gear ratio. That is something to watch for the first 3 gears of this car, and is a good reason to upshift exiting the slower turns. For example, dropping to third for the bus stop chicane that's coming up is great for slowing the car and turning, but you need to jump to 4th to accelerate because you're virtually at the top of the third already. For this track I settled on a +3 brake balance, but to be honest, +2 was probably just as fast. As we lead up to this next section, I bet I'm not the only one who suffers flashbacks about going too wide into this chicane. Anyway, as we come out of it, I'm just going to speed us up to the end of the lap to cross the line and see that we have an optimum time of 1:47.753. And we can add that time to the leaderboard that I hope to fill up soon. Finally, I've selected Brands Hatch so that we can test the fuel consumption and the tyre wear in these cars. These comparisons will be so useful when deciding what car you're going to take into your private leagues as well as other competitions. They are often the difference between making 1 stop or 2. For this test, BOP and equal conditions are on as always. I'm using racing soft tyres at ×5 so they wear quickly, and the fuel consumption is set to ×3 starting at 100 litres. From what we've previously learned, I'm upshifting at 100% on the rev bar as that is the fastest for this car, and the brake balance range for this car is between +1 and +3, so I've set it to +2. So basically, I'm driving this car as I would race it based on the tests I've done so far. I'm going fast but not too mental as I don't want to ditch it and ruin the test. The idea is to do as many laps as the tyres will allow me and calculate the fuel consumption from there. Of course, I didn't want to bore you to death by making you watch all of it, so I've cut out most of the middle part to get us there quicker. Some people will always be better on fuel and tyres than others due to their driving technique, so it's hard to make an exact comparison. Rather than make the same gear changes in different cars or use the same brake balance for different cars, I much preferred the idea of using the best setup that I have found for each car and testing it on that. It will always be subjective due to the amount of variables there are, but this test under these rules should give us really good results. As we hit this bend coming now, the very last bit of white has disappeared from the tyres, prompting me to pull over and take a look at the HUD. At the top of the windscreen we can see we are on lap 9, meaning that we've completed over 8 laps including the out lap. There is also 56% fuel left, meaning that we've used 44%. This translates to 44 litres as we started with 100 litres. This graphic shows what part of the lap the front left died, meaning that we completed 8.6 laps of the course, which is placed on the leaderboard here. And then the final table shows that when we divide 44 litres by 8.6 laps, we are using 5.12 litres of fuel per lap. I will be ranking this leaderboard based on which cars use the least fuel per lap. So there we have it. My first time creating graphics, my first time editing, my first time doing voiceovers, and my very first time making a YouTube video. This video has been very explanatory about the methods I'm using to do the tests, and I'm going to be looking at ways that I can reduce the editing time to bring you the content faster. This will probably involve talking less and driving more, with this first one as more of a guide for the inevitable questions. So I hope you enjoyed it, I hope you found it useful, and I hope you join me next time. Thanks for watching. Jams out.